There is a brutal truth about human communication that few have the courage to face. A truth that explains why some people, despite their objective qualities, are instantly rejected, while others, often with less apparent attributes, are magnetically attractive. This truth is not found in self-help manuals or superficial advice on effective communication. It is in the shadows of human interaction, in the subconscious patterns that determine, in a matter of seconds, whether you will be perceived as someone of value or as someone to be avoided. The truth is this: there are fatal communication errors that, once committed, destroy your attractiveness so quickly and completely that no compensating qualities, intelligence, looks, status, wealth, can reverse the negative impression they create. These are primitive rejection triggers, rooted deep in human psychology, that activate visceral responses of aversion before conscious thought even has a chance to intervene. Have you ever wondered why some interactions seem to die before they even begin? Why do certain people, despite genuine efforts, seem to repel others as if emitting some kind of invisible force field? Why do you, perhaps despite your best intentions, often in conversations feeling that something went wrong, that a potential connection was lost, that a negative impression was created? The answer lies in these fatal mistakes. Toxic communication patterns that poison interactions, destroy perceptions of value, and eliminate any possibility of genuine attraction or respect. And most disturbingly, most people make these mistakes every day, completely unaware of the damage they're doing to their image, their relationships, their opportunities. Today, we'll dissect these mistakes with surgical precision. We'll expose their psychological roots, their devastating effects, and, most importantly, how to permanently eliminate them from your communication repertoire. Not to manipulate or deceive, but to remove the artificial barriers that prevent others from recognizing your true value and potential. The first fatal error, and perhaps the most common, is excessive validation. This error manifests itself when you constantly seek approval, agreement, or confirmation during the interaction. It is the right, agree, isn't that right, that compulsively insert at the end of sentences. It is the anxious look that seeks signs of approval after each statement. It is the immediate change of opinion at the slightest sign of disagreement. It is the nervous laughter that follows any slightly controversial statement. Excessive validation sends a devastating message at the subconscious level. My worth depends on your approval. Without your validation, I have no intrinsic value. And few signals are as repulsive as chronic insecurity. Not because people are cruel, but because we are biologically programmed to seek strength, stability, and confidence in those we associate with. The constant need for external validation signals the opposite of these qualities. Notice how truly attractive and influential people communicate. They make statements, not seek approval. They express opinions with quiet conviction, not interrogative anxiety. They sit comfortably in the silence that follows their words, confident in the value of what has been said, without needing immediate confirmation. It's not arrogance. It's self-validation, the deep understanding that your worth does not depend on the momentary judgment of others. To eliminate this error, start by rigorously auditing your verbal and non-verbal communication. Record yourself in conversations and count how often you seek validation. Observe your body language after making statements. Do you shrink, waiting for approval, or do you stand your ground? Practice making clear statements and then pausing, breathing, allowing the silence to exist without the need to fill it with requests for validation. At first, it will be uncomfortable. Your nervous system, conditioned to seek security in external approval, will protest. Persevere. The discomfort is temporary. The change in your perceived attractiveness will be permanent. The second fatal error is reactive communication. This pattern occurs when you are constantly responding instead of initiating, reacting instead of directing, following instead of leading the conversational dynamic. It is the habit of waiting for others to establish topics, ask questions, make decisions about the direction of the interaction, while you simply react to what is presented. Reactive communication sends a powerful subliminal message. I have no direction. I have no initiative. I don't have the confidence to guide this interaction. Evolutionarily, we signal submissiveness and a lack of inner resources, qualities that may be appropriate in certain hierarchical contexts, but that rarely inspire genuine attraction or respect. Notice how naturally magnetic people operate in social spaces. They don't aggressively dominate, but they don't just sit around passively either. They introduce interesting topics. They ask provocative questions. They change the course of the conversation when they feel it's stalling. They take responsibility for the success of the interaction, not just wait for others to do the emotional and intellectual work. To overcome this mistake, develop the habit of initiating. Prepare yourself with conversation topics that genuinely interest you. Practice the art of asking questions that open up new directions, not just respond to directions set by others. When you feel conversational energy waning, take the initiative to reinvigorate it with a new line of exploration. Don't wait for permission to lead. Take responsibility for the quality of the interaction. The third fatal error is over-explanation. This toxic pattern emerges when you feel the compulsion to over-justify your decisions, preferences, opinions, or actions. These are the long, unsolicited explanations, the elaborate justifications, the preemptive excuses that precede or follow simple statements that would otherwise require no explanation. Over-explaining communicates deep insecurity and, more disturbingly, a subconscious assumption of guilt or inadequacy. When you over-explain, you are essentially saying, "I assume you will judge me negatively, so let me preemptively defend myself." Or worse, there is something fundamentally wrong or unacceptable about me that requires constant justification. Notice how people with magnetic presence operate. They make choices clearly, without needing to justify them. I prefer this restaurant. Not, I prefer this restaurant because I had a bad experience at the other one once, although maybe it was just a bad day, and I wouldn't mind trying it again if you really prefer that one. The first approach projects clarity and confidence. The second, insecurity and indecision. To break this pattern, adopt a simple but powerful rule. State, don't explain, unless specifically asked. Make clear statements about your preferences, opinions, and decisions, and then stop. If someone wants more information, let them ask. You'll discover something surprising. Most of the explanations you feel compelled to offer are never asked for or needed. They're products of your insecurity, not the informational needs of others. The fourth fatal error is communication incongruence. This error occurs when your words say one thing, but your tone of voice, facial expression, body posture, and overall energy communicate something completely different. It is the dissonance between verbal content and nonverbal cues that creates a sense of insincerity, manipulation, or dishonesty. Incongruence sets off primitive alarms in other social brains. Evolutionarily, we've developed an acute sensitivity to detect mixed signals because they often indicate potential threat or deception. When someone says, "I'm perfectly fine with that," while their entire body tenses in discomfort, our threat detection systems kick in. We don't trust what's being said because we feel the contradiction viscerally. Notice how people with magnetic presence demonstrate total congruence. Their words, tone, facial expression, gestures, and posture tell a unified story. There is no contradiction between what they say and how they say it. This inner harmony creates a sense of authenticity and trustworthiness that is fundamentally attractive. To develop congruence, start with internal honesty. Acknowledge your true feelings before communicating them. If you're uncomfortable with something, don't just say so. Find words that reflect your true position. Practice body awareness during conversations, noticing when your nonverbal language contradicts your words. Gradually align all channels of communication so they convey a unified, authentic message. The fifth fatal error is compulsive monologue. This pattern emerges when you dominate the conversational space, talking excessively without creating opportunities for genuine input or engagement from the other person. It is the torrent of words that allows no interruption, the constant flow of information, opinion, or narrative that turns what should be an exchange into a one-sided presentation. The compulsive monologue communicates a devastating message. I'm more interested in being heard than in listening. Your input has no value to me. This isn't a conversation, it's my platform. Few things are as repulsive as the feeling of being a forced spectator rather than a valued participant. Notice how people with genuine charisma create conversational space. They share, yes, but in digestible chunks that invite response. They pause strategically. They ask questions that aren't just rhetorical. They show genuine interest in the other person's reactions and contributions. They treat conversation as a collaborative creation, not a stage for solo performance. To overcome this mistake, develop an awareness of conversational balance. A useful rule of thumb: rarely speak for more than 20 to 30 seconds without creating an opportunity for response or engagement. Practice the art of the pause, the moment of silence after expressing a thought that naturally invites the other person to contribute. Cultivate genuine curiosity about the other person's reactions, thoughts, and perspectives, not just as a superficial courtesy, but as a core value. The sixth fatal error is persistent superficiality. This pattern manifests itself when you keep all interactions as shallow as possible: weather, news, trivia, obvious observations, systematically avoiding any depth, vulnerability, or real meaning. It's conversation that fills the acoustic space without creating any authentic connection. Persistent superficiality communicates a problematic message. I don't trust you enough to show any depth. I don't value this interaction enough to invest emotionally in it. I'm here physically, but I keep my true self inaccessible. This approach may feel safe, but it creates fundamentally unsatisfying and forgettable interactions. Notice how people with magnetic presence navigate between surface and depth. They don't immediately dive into intensely personal revelations, but they don't remain perpetually on the surface either. They create openings for more meaningful connection. They offer glimpses into their authentic interiority. They ask questions that invite responses beyond the superficial. They demonstrate a willingness to explore deeper conversational territories when the context is appropriate. To transcend this error, practice calibrated vulnerability. It's not about overexposure or inappropriate disclosures, but about a willingness to share perspectives, values, and experiences that reveal something genuine about who you are. Ask questions that invite reflection, not just recitation of facts. When the other person offers depth, acknowledge and value that offering, rather than immediately veering back to the superficial. The seventh fatal error is imbalanced energy. This pattern occurs when your communicative energy is chronically misaligned with the context, either overly intense and enthusiastic in situations that call for moderation, or apathetic and disengaged in moments that require presence and vitality. It is the inability to modulate your energy level to create resonance with the environment and the people around you. Unbalanced energy creates visceral discomfort because it forces others to constantly compensate, whether by soothing your excessive intensity or trying to energize your chronic apathy. Both extremes drain the emotional resources of those around you, making your presence a chore rather than a pleasure. Notice how people with a magnetic presence modulate their energy with precision. They bring vitality to situations that need uplifting and calm to moments that call for restraint. Their energy is not fixed at an unchanging point on the spectrum, but fluid and responsive, always appropriate, always calibrated to create comfort and resonance, never to dominate or to disappear. To master energetic balance, first develop self-awareness. Identify your natural tendency. Do you tend to bring too much or too little energy to interactions? Practice expanding your range in both directions. If you tend toward excessive intensity, cultivate the ability to slow down, breathe, and create space. If you tend toward insufficient energy, develop practices to access more vitality when needed. The key is not to suppress your nature, but to expand your repertoire for greater flexibility and precision. The eighth fatal mistake is chronic negativity. This toxic pattern emerges when your communication is dominated by complaints, criticism, skepticism, pessimism, and a consistent focus on what's wrong instead of what's right. It's the tendency to turn any topic into an opportunity to express dissatisfaction or a gloomy outlook. Chronic negativity is repulsive because it creates a toxic energy field that contaminates everything around it. Evolutionarily, humans avoid associating with individuals who constantly identify problems without offering solutions. They represent a drain on the group's resources with no compensating benefit. Furthermore, our tendency toward emotional contagion means that one person's negativity literally diminishes the biochemical well-being of those around them. Notice how people with magnetic presence approach reality. They are not falsely positive or naively optimistic. They acknowledge challenges and problems, but frame them as opportunities for solution or growth. They find humor in difficult situations. They focus on possibilities, not just limitations. Their presence energizes and uplifts, rather than drains and depresses. To transcend this error, practice conscious reframing. Before expressing a negative observation, ask yourself, what is the constructive perspective here? How can I approach this in a way that adds value rather than just identifies problems? Develop the habit of finding the positive potential in situations, not as an exercise in self-deception, but as a practice in perceiving reality more fully and in balance. Now that we've identified these fatal errors, let's explore the process of permanently eliminating them from your communication repertoire. Transformation begins with relentless awareness. You can't change patterns that you're not aware of. Record your conversations with proper permission. Ask for honest feedback from people you trust. Observe yourself as an outside observer during interactions. Identify which of these fatal errors appear most frequently in your communication. The next step is conscious interruption. When you notice a toxic pattern emerging during an interaction, create a moment of internal pause. Breathe. Stop the autopilot. This moment of awareness creates space for choice rather than habitual reaction. At first, you will probably only notice the mistake after you make it. With practice, you will begin to recognize it as it is happening. Eventually, you will recognize the impulse before it even arises. The third step is strategic replacement. For each fatal error, consciously develop its positive alternative. If you tend toward over-validation, practice making clear statements without seeking approval. If you fall into compulsive monologue, develop the habit of pausing and asking questions. If you persist in superficiality, prepare yourself with openings for greater depth. The key is not just to eliminate the negative, but to actively cultivate its positive opposite. The fourth step is deliberate practice. Communication transformation does not happen by accident or vague intention. It requires focused, consistent practice. Start in low-stakes contexts, casual interactions where the pressure is minimal. Gradually apply your new patterns in progressively more challenging situations. Each interaction becomes an opportunity for conscious refinement. The final step is unconscious integration. With enough practice, the new communication patterns become your second-order nature, as automatic as fatal errors once were. You no longer need to consciously monitor every interaction. Magnetic communication becomes your natural, authentic expression. It's important to recognize that this process is not about manipulation or creating a false persona. Rather, it's about removing the artificial barriers, those fatal flaws that prevent your true essence from being perceived and valued. It's about eliminating the toxic patterns that distort how others experience you, allowing your authentic value to shine through unobstructed. Transformation will not happen overnight. There will be setbacks, moments of frustration, temporary returns to old patterns under pressure. This is normal and expected. Progress is not linear, but with persistence, the overall direction will be unequivocally positive. Each interaction becomes slightly more effective, each connection a little deeper, each impression a little more impactful, and the results will be unmistakable. You'll notice subtle but significant changes in the way others respond to your presence. Greater attentiveness, more genuine respect, deeper connections, more natural influence. Not because you're manipulating or performing, but because you've removed the obstacles that prevented others from experiencing their authentic value. The choice is now yours. You can continue to make these fatal mistakes, unconsciously sabotaging your attractiveness and influence with every interaction. Or you can embark on the journey of communication transformation, eliminating these toxic patterns and unlocking the full potential of your authentic presence. Remember, your communication is not just a skill. It is the bridge between your inner world and the outer world. It is the vehicle through which your value is perceived, your influence is exerted, your presence is felt. When you eliminate these fatal errors, you are not just improving a technical skill. You are fundamentally transforming how the world experiences who you are. True attractiveness doesn't come from superficial techniques or calculated manipulations. It comes from the absence of barriers between your authentic worth and the perception of others. Eliminate these fatal flaws, and you won't have to work at being attractive. You'll simply be, naturally and effortlessly, because nothing will stand in the way of your true power.